What's going on, people? Welcome to another Emotional Football live stream. It's been a minute, but we're back. Training camp is around the corner. It is Sunday, July 20th. And for those of you who don't know, there's only two teams that have reported to training camp so far. But the rest of the NFL is going to be reporting to training camp at some point this upcoming Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So by midweek this week, all 32 teams will be in the thick of things with training camp. And that means football is around the corner. And that means we can start to really look at the 2025 season. Up until this point, we've been in the middle of the off season and everything's kind of been up in the air. Lots of time left for teams to make moves, lots of time left for teams to address things. But here we are, it's training camp. Things are real. And I think there's no better way to kick off training camp season than to go through the NFL and really dig into the different things that I'll be paying attention to. Training camp is a time where teams are usually practicing out in the open in front of their fans and their reporters. And the reporters of all teams are watching these practices and reporting back to their outlets with updates about who's doing well, who's doing not well, what takeaways are fair from the practices. So with that being said, I'm going to be keeping up with that stuff. I'm going to be on this channel reporting to you guys about that stuff. And to kind of to set the tone for how that's going to happen, like I said, I'm going to go through the NFL and we're going to talk about every single team that I care about. So we are going to start with the Cardinals are first up on the depth chart. I don't think there's anything in particular I'm paying attention to with the Cardinals. They've had a pretty ho-hum offseason. We're just going to let them do their thing. Atlanta Falcons. I would say the Falcons, what I'm really paying attention to is the pass rush, specifically James Pierce and Jalen Walker. So when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons, you can expect where to put your expectations on the offense. We expect Bijan to be able to do well. We expect Penix and Drake London and some of the receivers to take steps forward. When it comes to the defense, what I'm paying attention to is this defense has to be highly productive. Raheem Morris is a defensive head coach. When you bring in a defensive head coach and you essentially subject your offense to having an offensive coordinator that leads the offense as opposed to a head coach, you're subjecting yourself to having the second tier of tacticians when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. The only thing that can happen to justify that is having an elite defense. So I look at the Falcons. I think they have to have an elite defense to justify hiring Raheem Morris. And I think the other thing that really makes it so that they have to have an elite defense, they spent 2 first-round picks on pass rushers. The reason they did that is because they had one of the worst pass rushers in football last year. So they made a big commitment to that side of the ball. And it's to 2 talented players, but it's to 2 very young players. When it comes to Jalen Walker and James Pierce, the quicker they develop, the better. But that's why I think that's the thing you have to pay attention to, because it's reasonable to say that they could be both really good players that take a year to get into the swing of things as pass rushers. That's a very typical thing to happen for rookies. Even if you look at the Eagles last year, they relied on having 2 corners that were rookies that played almost 100% of the snaps. But things, it took the whole year for things to fall into place. By the end of the year, they look good. The thing about the Falcons is the Falcons are under a lot of pressure from the very beginning. I think it would be fair to say Raheem Morris was a little bit disappointing in his first year as a coach. But bigger than Raheem Morris, the general manager and the management has been at it for a long time. They've spent a lot of money. They've spent a lot of draft capital. They need to start producing. And I think that at the very core of producing for Atlanta are 2 young pass rushers. So when it comes to reading about Atlanta's training camp notes, I'm going to be paying attention to the pass rushers. I'm going to be paying attention to if people are saying that the pass rushers look good, if they look polished, if they look raw and in need of development. I think that's going to be a very big tone setter for Atlanta's season. If Atlanta wants to come out firing, these guys have to be balling from minute 1. If they're not, it's going to take time for Atlanta to get into the swing of things. Because like I said, their defense has to play really well, I think, to justify having Raheem Morris, but also to be a football team, right? That's winning. I think they have to have an elite defense. If not, that's putting a lot of pressure on Michael Penix. And Michael Penix, in essence, is a rookie in a way. In year 1, he was thrown into things at the end of the year. Under really particular circumstances, he was essentially thrown onto the football field in the middle of a playoff chase. So that's a pressure cooker. That's a high leverage situation to be putting him on the field. So I don't think that was really the best way to have a young quarterback play his first minutes. I really think he's getting his career started this year. So if you give him an average defense, you're putting a ton of pressure on him. I think if the Falcons defense is good and they can play ball control football with Bijan Robinson, that's the way going forward for them. So that's what I'm going to be paying attention to. The next team is Baltimore. I don't think there's anything in particular that I'm going to be looking for with Baltimore. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I know what to expect. They're bringing back quite a bit defensively. The additions are depth guys like Awuzie, John Jenkins. The two big pieces are Jair Alexander and Malachi Starks, but I don't think there's anything like unexpected with those two players. Again, offensively, they mostly added depth pieces. Not really much that I'll be paying attention to when it comes to Baltimore. When it comes to Buffalo, I'll be paying attention to the receivers. So on the defensive side of the ball, I think we know that Buffalo has to have a better year. Again, similar to Atlanta, you have a defensive head coach. The only way to justify that is to have a defense that's balling, and that is not what they have. So, their main additions are pass rushers, Bosa and Michael Hecht, but they've had a crazy offseason when it comes to off-the-field stuff. There's obviously the allegations against Maxwell Hairston, and then there's the suspensions to Ogunjobi and Michael Hecht. So, again, a lot of continuity for Buffalo's defense, and with the additions, there's all kinds of crazy shit going on. Joey Bosa's hurt as well. So almost every addition they made defensively has something going on. So I can't say that I'll be watching too much for their team defensively. What I'm really going to be honing in on is the receivers, because one, I don't think Buffalo has a chance to win a Super Bowl if the receivers don't play, if they don't have a top 10 receiving core. And I'll tell you why. Josh Allen, I think, is phenomenal. I think he is Superman. The problem is you can't ask him to be Superman for 4 games in a row in January and February and expect that to happen, because that's an unreasonable expectation, right? Patrick Mahomes, if you think about all the years that he's won Super Bowls, forget the playoff runs, right? Even if you just look at the Super Bowls themselves, he hasn't necessarily played well in every single quarter of the Super Bowls. I say that to say, in years that Patrick Mahomes has won the Super Bowl, that didn't happen on the back of him playing phenomenal for 16 quarters in the playoffs. Think about the Houston game. Not a great first 2 quarters, an absolutely phenomenal third and fourth quarter. Buffalo, by virtue of the team that they are, have never afforded Josh Allen the ability to be that kind of player. And I think, he's not in control of the defense. He, I think, has a functional offensive line, a functional running game. I think the thing that's out of his control at this point is the wide receiver core. I think Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and Elijah Moore, these are 7 guys where I think there's a lot of responsibility that falls on their shoulders. And the reason why I think this wide receiver group is so interesting in particular is because it is very unclear who has what role. If you think about it, right? Curtis Samuel, we can say that guy's a gadget guy. Fair enough, right? Keon Coleman, young receiver with a lot of upside. Is he the 1, the 2, or the 3? I don't think he's shown enough to say that he's the 1 right now. If he's the 2, who is the 1, right? Josh Palmer, I think this guy definitely is not the 1, but if he's the 2 or the 3, that's yet to be determined. Khalil Shakir, he's a 3 to me. And then the wild card here is Elijah Moore. And the reason I say that is because Elijah Moore was a part of 2 pretty shitty franchises in the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. I don't think he's had particularly good quarterback play in his career. I don't think he's been in good offenses. I don't think he's effectively had a fair chance at this whole NFL thing. That being said, he's in Buffalo now, and probably the best quarterback play he's had in his entire life, in an offense that, again, is looking for receiver help. So Elijah Moore is a wild card. Keon Coleman is a wild card. I think Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir and Josh Palmer are kind of set in their roles. But the reason why I'm watching this for this receiving core is because if Coleman can ascend to a 1, that lets everybody else fall into place, right? Because then you have Palmer, Shakir, and Elijah Moore, who can all be somewhere between 2 to 4, and then Curtis Samuel, that can be a gadget guy. At that point, you're cooking with gas when it comes offensively, when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. They're in really good shape if that happens. If Keon Coleman does not ascend to that 1, and Elijah Moore, and look, I don't think he could ascend to a 1. He could ascend to a 2 or a 3, maybe. Who knows? But if that doesn't happen, then they're kind of just in this weird cluster where they have some guys, but they don't have enough guys to make Josh Allen's life easy. So that's why I think this receiving core is especially interesting, because it could be, and I'm going to talk about New England's receiving core pretty similarly, although they're, I would say, not as good. This receiving core could be phenomenal if Keon Coleman establishes himself as the 1 and lets everybody else fall into their natural roles. But if he doesn't and they're without a 1, then you ultimately look at this as a receiving core that's not pulling its weight when it comes to being a championship caliber, high-level offense in the NFL. And if that doesn't happen, then Josh Allen is in the same position he's been in his entire career, which is he has to be Superman. And again, I don't think you can win a Super Bowl requiring your quarterback to be Superman for 4 straight games in January and February. So that's my big thing when it comes to the Bills, and why I'll be paying attention to their wide receivers going into training camp. The next team is hold on. Did I miss a team somewhere? No, I didn't. Okay, the next team, Carolina Panthers. Am I watching anything in particular for the Panthers? No. I think everything I said about the Bills receiving core applies to the Panthers, but I feel pretty good about T-Mac being the number 1, so I'm not going to be paying attention to that too much. Offensive line I feel good about. They've made some additions on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, I'm not really going to be paying attention to anything in particular when it comes to the Panthers. Oh, the Bears. The Bears, I'm definitely going to be paying a lot of attention to. So on the defensive side of the ball, I trust Dennis Allen as a defensive head coach, and I think he is the DC, right? I'm not entirely sure. That may have been a rumor that I remember. But regardless, I trust the defensive side of the ball. I think they have excellent personnel. I think Dayo Odeyingbo and Grady Jarrett are awesome pieces. So yeah, I think they're in a good spot defensively. When it comes to the offense, this is what everybody came to see, because we're going to see Ben Johnson away from Detroit's infrastructure, and we're going to see Caleb Williams with a coaching staff that's not horrendous. So there's quite a bit to see here. But when I think about how this offense is going to materialize, I feel like I know what to expect from the receivers. I like their receiving core as a whole. I think the addition of Luther Burden is big, and they have enough. Especially for Ben Johnson, because if you think about Ben Johnson's offenses in Detroit, I think he always had 2 very solid receivers that got a lot of volume, but I don't necessarily think his offenses were feeding third receivers at a high rate. So when it comes to by Ben Johnson standards, I like having DJ Moore as your 1. I like Burden / Rome as the 2. And I think they have enough there for there to be a 3 and a 4 with whoever loses out the battle for the 2. And then you have Olamide Zaccheaus and Devin Duvernay, right? Cool. So offensive line, they already made their additions, of course. Tight end, they drafted Loveland, right? That Ben Johnson likes tight ends. So what's really left aside from Caleb Williams is the running back position. And if you think about how Detroit looked pre and post Jahmyr Gibbs, this was an offense that ran the hell out of the ball. This is Detroit. The Detroit offenses were very physical. They controlled the football. If you imagine what this would look like in Detroit, in Chicago, you think that, yeah, they have the pieces on the offensive line to replicate that, but they do not have the pieces in the running back room. And if you look at who they have from top to bottom, you have DeAndre Swift, who, for people who might have forgot, DeAndre Swift was in Detroit with Ben Johnson. What did Ben Johnson do? He traded him to Philadelphia and drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. So Ben Johnson, we already know, is not a DeAndre Swift fan. So this is a running back we already know he doesn't like. Roschon Johnson, I think this is the wild card. So we'll come back to Roschon. He has Kyle Monangai, 7th round pick, right? I don't know whether this guy is good or not, right? I'm not familiar with his game. But David Montgomery was a big investment in terms of the contract he got in free agency. Jahmyr Gibbs was the 12th overall pick. So Detroit wasn't shy about investing in running back. It wasn't just that they were creating running backs out of nothing. No, they made a point to go get talented players. And you can't say that that's the case with a 7th round pick. Travis Homer, this guy is a career special teamer, right? Can maybe get, 50 touches a season. Ian Wheeler, an injured, undrafted running back from last year. Deion Hankins, an undrafted running back from this year. So I say this to say, Chicago's running back room is very, like, compared to Detroit, super underinvested. Um, and the big thing for me is I sit back and I'm like, it just doesn't make sense that Ben Johnson is doing this. There's a lot of investment that went into the offensive line. There were high draft picks that went into receiver and tight end. He was not shy about adding to this team, and I think the way he invested is a declaration of intent. But the running back investment just doesn't match up to everything else. Now, is it possible that they just prioritize the other positions and they're going to get back to this next offseason? Of course. But I think personally, there's a small chance that he's a big Roschon Johnson fan. And this is what I'm going to be paying attention to. What does Roschon Johnson's usage look like in training camp? To me, their offseason would make sense if Ben Johnson was quietly a big Roschon Johnson fan. They both are Johnsons. Maybe there's a thing there. Who knows? This could be the Johnson and Johnson offense in Chicago. But we just know for a fact that he doesn't like DeAndre Swift. We know for a fact that in his last team, they invested in running back. And we know for a fact that they haven't invested in running back this year. So something has to add up to make this make sense. And I think the thing that could happen to tie this all together, it's Ben Johnson secretly being a fan of Roschon Johnson, who a lot of people were fans of in the draft, by the way, the year he was drafted. So we're going to see what happens there. I think that might be the case. And like I said, I'm going to be paying attention to what does that backfield split look like? If it's a 50-50 in training camp, trust me, by the end of the year, Roschon will be the number one back. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to be paying attention to when it comes to Chicago. Cincinnati. Okay. Cincinnati. This is very straightforward. This is very straightforward. We know about this offense, right? Chase Brown is cool. The offensive line is suspect. The receivers are phenomenal, right? Burrow is him. When it comes to the defense was trash last year. And as we all know, one of the most important parts of a defense is getting to the quarterback. And what we also know is that two of the main pass rushers on the Bengals have contract disputes. And I'll say this, like, there's a 0% chance you have to take Cincinnati seriously. 0% chance if they don't sort these pass rusher contracts out. So between Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart, if this goes on into the end of training camp, rest assured that Cincinnati is starting 0-2 again, because this is a team I think that started 0-2 2 years in a row, and I think they were 1-1 the year before. So, all things considered, this is a team that has stumbled out of the gates. And if they enter next year with their horrible defense, that lost more pieces, by the way, steps onto the field with a Trey Hendrickson that maybe missed the first couple of weeks of training camp or all of training camp, and Shamar Stewart, a developmental pass rusher, by the way, somebody who was a freak athlete, but not somebody with a ton of production. If he steps onto the football field in September with very little practice, this is a recipe for disaster. And again, I would, under normal circumstances, say the thing I'm watching for are the Bengals pass rushers, but that's not the case, because before we even get to see if the pass rushers are on the field or not, we have to watch the Bengals contract negotiators, their contract lawyers, their sports lawyers, their agents, whoever they have do the work. All eyes are on them, and whether they get the pass rushers in the door, because forget how good or not good these guys are, there is 0 chance that this turns out well for them if they can't even get them in the door. So Cincinnati's contract lawyers, all eyes are on you, because if you think about this defense, right, up the middle, they have a couple of draft picks from last year, a second-round pick and a third-round pick. These are guys that I didn't hear too much about last year. You got Taven Bryan, a reclamation project, somebody who was kind of a bust in terms of being a high pick. BJ Hill, solid player. TJ Slayton, solid player, right? Nothing special in the middle of the defensive line. When it comes to the defensive ends, right? You got Miles Murphy, also a bit of a bust. Joseph Osai, okay player, most commonly most famous for pushing Mahomes out of bounds and getting that 15-yard penalty at the end of the AFC Championship game. The only pass rushers you can really put any expectation onto are Trey Hendrickson, one of your best players, and Shamar Stewart, your highest draft pick from last year. So they have this front as a whole has no chance of being anything close to competent if those guys don't get on the field soon. And their defense as a whole has very little chance of being competent if that's the case. So That's why we're looking at the Bengals contract negotiators, and we're like, all eyes are on you, people. When it comes to the Browns, who are the next team, nothing in particular I'm looking for, primarily just because I have very little expectations for this team. Um, I know what they are defensively. I think they have respectable pieces. I think a lot of these pieces quit last year because it was such a shit show. And I think, again, if the offense is respectable, I expect this unit to be respectable. And if they're not, then I expect them not to be. Because you can only play so hard knowing that the other side of the team is going to ruin everything you have going on. On the offensive side of the ball, it's just going to be the quarterbacks because, again, nothing really matters unless they figure the quarterback situation out. But also, like, the quarterback situation is a complete, just a complete shit show, right? Joe Flacco, literally 40, played good in Cleveland, but, kind of disappointing in Indy, which I thought was a better situation than Cleveland 2 years ago. So that was a bit surprising. Kenny Pickett, this guy was literally not better than Tanner McKee in Eagles practices and Eagles training camp last year. Anybody that covers the Eagles will tell you this. Dillon Gabriel, nobody knows why he was drafted in the third round. This guy literally just does not have NFL measurables. Shedeur Sanders, somebody who obviously has some upside, but has a pretty limited game as a whole when it comes to a lack of mobility and playing in a pretty gimmicky offense in Colorado. So, it's not even like you can look at 4 quarterbacks and establish a favorite. This is a complete shit show, and I guess we'll pay attention to what happens, but I almost just don't care because I don't expect this to work. I don't expect either of the quarterbacks to be particularly good this year. If anybody does, that would be a surprise. But yeah, I don't have my hopes too high. The next team, Cowboys. Okay, yeah, Cowboys, pretty simple. I'll be watching the running backs. So defensively, they have some injuries, they have some marginal additions, but there's nothing to really look at too carefully. The reason why I care about their running backs is because I kind of think that they need to have a good running game. The reason why I think they need to have a good running game is because I'll put it this way. I don't think their offensive line looked good enough to be able to protect Dak reliably all year if teams know that they can just tee off because they don't have to respect the running game. I think they're going to have to, my understanding of offensive line play is that offensive line play, when they're running the football and the offensive linemen get to go attack the defenders, it's a little bit easier to do that with not great offensive linemen because it's like a proactive thing, right? But when you're throwing the football and your offensive linemen are going backwards and they're reactive, that's a lot more difficult of a thing to do. So I think you got Tyler Booker, who I understand to be a road grader and less of a protector. I think about this offensive line and I'm like, for them to have a chance, especially because I know that same thing about Terrence Steele. Terrence Steele, not a great pass protector, but he can run block. So I look at the right side of their offensive line and I'm like, they can run block. I don't know if they can pass protect. So, if they can run the ball, I think they'll get more out of their offensive line. And I think they'll make life easier for Dak Prescott. And I think that'll help them get the most when it comes to efficiency out of CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. I think you could get empty volume and essentially empty calories offensively if you just chuck the ball 50 times a game. But if they actually want to be a good football team, they have to have a good running game. Now, the offensive line is half of that, but the other half of that is the running back position. And I think they've had a strange offseason when it comes to the running back room. You got Javonte Williams, a player that was highly touted in college, but a player that's had his struggles in the NFL before a devastating injury and then a devastating injury 2 years ago. Now, people do say that when it comes to those devastating knee injuries, that year one is always difficult, but year two from the injury is normally where it's at. So this is year 2 Javonte coming up. Maybe we get something that looks closer to how he played in college. But with Javonte, let's look up how old he is. Javonte is, he'll be 25. So, actually not horrible from an age standpoint. Obviously, this is somebody who's coming off a gruesome injury. But, you're hoping for something with Javonte Williams. You can't actually point to something that happened recently and say, this is what we're getting. Because if what you're getting is what Javonte was last year, that's not good enough. If you're getting what Javonte was pre-injury, that's still not good enough, right? You're looking to get something that we last saw in college prior to a devastating knee injury. That's a hope, right? Miles Sanders, also a hope, right? This is a guy who's productive in Philadelphia, but a huge beneficiary of a phenomenal running system and a phenomenal offensive line. We've seen DeAndre Swift have a career year. We've seen Saquon Barkley have one of the greatest years of all time. The setup in Philadelphia empowers running backs. Miles Sanders was a pretty big beneficiary. Also, I say I'm an Eagles fan. I've watched a lot of Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders was an explosive running back, an athletic running back, year 1, year 2. He got a bunch of lower body injuries, and by the end of his tenure in Philadelphia, I thought he was lacking explosion. When he signed in Carolina, I expected that to go bad. He had more injuries in Carolina. He had even less productivity in Carolina. And again, when you think about Miles Sanders, what you're hoping, you're hoping for something. There's nothing you can point at and say, this is what Miles Sanders just did, and this is what we're looking for. If he plays like he did in Carolina, that's not good enough. If he plays like he did in Philadelphia, maybe you're getting there. But you cannot, in Dallas, they do not have what it takes to replicate what Philadelphia is. So you would need Miles Sanders to play better than he played in Philadelphia just to match that production in Dallas. Can you expect Miles Sanders in year what? I think he's going into year 7 in the NFL. A 28-year-old Miles Sanders in year 7. Do you expect him to play some of the best football of his career, better than he played in Philadelphia during the early parts of his career? I think that's unreasonable. That's another hope. Jaden Blue. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pile together Deuce Vaughn and Jaden Blue. I think both of these backs have potential as a complementary piece, but neither of these guys is the guy. Phil Maffa, I don't know anything about this guy, 7th round pick. But again, hoping that relying on a 7th round pick to carry you is not a real thing. That's a hope. I say this to say this running back room is full of hoping, and it's full of relying on somebody's best happening that hasn't happened recently, that we don't know for sure is going to happen again. And if hope doesn't prevail, the Cowboys aren't going to have a good running attack. And if they don't have a good running attack, I don't trust Dak and Schottenheimer to execute a passing game that's good enough to produce against defenses that are looking to stop the pass. So I think this is going to be key for Dallas. And again, a lot is up in the air. So when it comes to training camp, I'm going to be watching for, are these players producing? Does the Cowboys running game look promising? Next team we're going to look at, we got the Denver Broncos. So the Denver Broncos, they were already a good team defensively last year, and then they added Hufanga, Greenlaw, and Jahdae Barron. So I expect this defense to be even better. Nothing much to really pay attention to on this side of the ball. When it comes to the offensive side of the ball, I think they upgraded their running back room by adding RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. Remember, J.K. Dobbins was 1 year off an Achilles tear last year. He should be even healthier and more productive this year. So you got an upgrade in the running back room. You got an upgrade in the tight end room with Evan Ingram. Bo Nix is Bo Nix. I think he's limited. I think he's really not that guy. But nonetheless, he's the quarterback. So I'm not really going to be paying attention to too much there because I feel like I already know what I'm going to get with Bo Nix. If you're going to make Bo Nix's life easier so that you can get the absolute most out of him that you could possibly get, I think you're going to need his receiving core to look good. I like Courtland Sutton. I think Courtland Sutton is a wide receiver too. And I think he's been in the NFL for long enough that you can maybe expect some regression at some point. I identify 4 receivers here that were drafted in the last 3 years. You got Pat Bryant drafted this past draft in the 3rd round. You got Franklin and Vele drafted a year ago in 2024. And then you got Marvin Mims drafted the year before that in 2023. So you have a core of 4 young receivers here. And I think the internal development of these 4 receivers is going to be a big part of how good Denver is, because I think they're going to have the running game and the defense in order to make them win a lot of games. What's going to really decide if they're contenders or not is Bo Nix in the passing game. And again, I think Bo Nix is limited. I think he's going to hit a sophomore slump. The thing that can kind of offset that a little bit is the receiving core making his life easy. And I don't think it's reasonable to expect too much more from Courtland Sutton than we've already seen. And just Courtland Sutton is not going to be enough. So all eyes are on those 4 young receivers, because that's going to really determine how things go for Denver. So that's where my attention is going to be when I'm reading the Denver training camp reports. I'm going to be thinking about their receivers. The next team here is Detroit. There's nothing in particular I'm going to be watching for Detroit. They're going to have to be playing some young offensive linemen in the middle of their line. But I kind of trust that they're going to figure that out. I think that they've done a good job of developing talent, because they didn't just get stacked by investing. Guys like Dan Skipper, they developed in-house. Graham Glasgow, like they got the best out of some players that at times were not playing the best ball in the world. So I trust that they're going to figure things out offensively. Green Bay, I'm also not going to be looking at anything in particular. I kind of think they've had a quiet offseason. Lost Jair, got Nate Hobbs. That's probably a downgrade. Gained Aaron Banks. I don't think he's the greatest. You gained Matthew Golden. I like him. I don't think he's necessarily the difference between where they were last year and being contenders. I actually think it's been a pretty inactive offseason for the Packers. Houston Texans. Okay. Houston Texans, I'm going to be watching their offensive line. And the main reason I'm going to be watching their offensive line is because, one, there's I'm looking at it right now. There's 9 guys that could play. The interesting thing about Houston's line is that they don't really have a ton of standouts. I think the only guys that are guaranteed to play are Fisher, Howard, and Cam Robinson. But the other 2 spots, there's a bunch of candidates for guys that could play. But the main reason I'm watching the offensive line is I actually think the Texans have a bit of a super team outside of their offensive line. I look at their defense, and their defense was balling down the stretch at the last year. They were balling the year before. I trust DeMeco Ryans, and I look at what this team did. They're bringing back all their talented players, and they added CJ. They had a bunch of young players, or they've been playing consistently a bunch of young players that I expect some development from internally. So I expect the defense to do well. When I look at the offense, man, Nico Collins is him. I love Nico Collins, and I think that they've done a good job investing, adding the 2 rookies and Christian Kirk. I think they're going to figure things out when it comes to the weapons. It's going to be good enough. I look at the running back room. I like Joe Mixon, but you're due for some regression at any point. That being said, they got Nick Chubb, who again off a devastating knee injury, but like everybody says, year 1 off the knee injury is usually pretty rough. Year 2 is when the player has a chance to look like they did pre-injury. So that could be the case with Nick Chubb. But the other thing that I think is most important, and it's bigger than the offensive line, is that allegedly Nick Caley from the Rams that they hired, the new offensive coordinator, apparently his running scheme is a lot of running in between the guards and running right up the middle. Apparently it's a pretty physical rushing attack. And if you think about how they've built their running back room, Dameon Pierce, that works for him. So Dameon Pierce was good when that's how they played football. When they were doing this wide zone stuff last year, he was a fish out of water. But Dameon Pierce is that kind of a runner. Nick Chubb is that kind of runner. Joe Mixon is also that kind of a runner. So if they're going to be that kind of a physical football team running the football, they have the backs. So I look at this team and I'm like, they have everything but the offensive line, because the offensive line last year was really trash. Apparently, they changed up their scheme and they were better towards the last month of the year. But again, if you look at what they have, Cam Robinson, solid left tackle, nothing special, right? He was traded from Jacksonville to Minnesota last year when Darrisaw went out. He can do a job. But he's switching teams every year because he's not that guy anymore. Good left tackles do not find themselves on their 3rd team in, what would it be? This would be his 3rd team in 7 months. That doesn't happen when you're actually a great left tackle. He's solid, right? Laken Tomlinson, this is very suspect. He was playing on Seattle last year, and Seattle's offensive line was trash. Juice Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, Titus Howard, and Blake Fisher. All these guys played last year, and they all had their struggles at some point, but they all kind of played a little bit better down the stretch. So these guys are all up in the air because we've seen them play not the best ball. Now, I think Titus Howard is good because he's transitioning from tackle to guard, and that is typically seen as going from a more difficult position to an easier position. So I think Titus Howard is going to look good. Blake Fisher, obviously they played him as a young player, 2nd round pick. I imagine that they expect development from him. But yeah, Jake Andrews, this is somebody who I think was a backup in New England. He was waived by New England, who needs offensive linemen. So I don't think that's the best. Ed Ingram, he was garbage last year. Trent Brown, nobody looks at the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line and says that's a great offensive line. But again, another offensive tackle who's played on a lot of teams. That does not happen when you're good at that position. And then Ariante Ursary, a second-round pick. So there's literally like 9 guys that could play. And we don't know who's going to play. And we don't know if any of these guys are good. So that's why I'm really going to be watching this when it comes to the Texans. I'm going to be seeing, do they have it figured out with the offensive line, particularly the interior of the line? If they don't, I think that, it's going to be a shame to watch this super team wasted. But if they do, these are real Super Bowl contenders, people. But yeah, that's the Texans. Next team, the Colts. This is easy. This is very, very simple, people. What am I going to be watching when it comes to the Colts? The quarterback position. And I think a lot of people, when they talk about the Colts quarterback position, they talk about, simply, are either of these guys good? I actually think there's a chance Anthony Richardson is not good, but he still gets the starting job. Because I think if you take a step back, the bigger call is that if you bench Anthony Richardson for Daniel Jones, there's no coming back. There's no way a young quarterback that you think has potential to be your future you bench that player for Daniel Jones. That is not done in the NFL. When a quarterback is seen to have potential to be the future, organizations do whatever they can to pour into that player, right? And every now and then, these kind of players maybe need to get pulled for their own sake. So Tua at some point got pulled for Ryan Fitzpatrick. That was a momentary thing, and that was very early in his career. I think Jared Goff also got pulled as a rookie. But the point is like, you don't have this wishy-washy back and forth. You're playing and then you're not. You're playing and then you're not with good young quarterbacks. That is usually a sign that the quarterback's not that good. Getting benched for Daniel Jones is the final nail in the coffin. And that's the reason why I think there's a chance that if Daniel Jones is only a little bit better than AR plays. If Daniel Jones is the starter, it's because AR looks like shit. And that's a pretty big thing. Like that's basically the end of his time in Indy. Whether he gets cut or not this year, the next offseason, he's gone if Daniel Jones gets the start. So this is what I'm going to be watching for in Indy because, if Daniel Jones gets the start, AR's time is over. And if Daniel Jones gets the start, nobody here actually believes he's going to end up being the guy in Indy, right? So we're going to know that Indy's in the market. Daniel Jones gets, a whole season to, put on tape what he can possibly put on tape to potentially show a team in the for the offseason that he's a viable backup or maybe, again, a valuable stopgap. But yeah, if that quarterback situation doesn't get figured out, not only is it the end of AR, it's probably the end of the coaching staff and the GM. Like, that's why it's such a big thing for me. I think that Daniel Jones winning the job means that Daniel Jones, Shane Steichen, and Chris Ballard are all gone next year. Anthony Richardson succeeding can save a lot of jobs. And if they all just quit on that, it's because he's showing a zero potential. So that's what I'll be watching for in Indy. Like, is AR showing any signs of life? But yeah, that's the Colts. The next team we're going to look at, Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, this one's also pretty simple and straightforward. I give a fuck about Travis Hunter. And the reason is because I actually think that Travis Hunter, not only does he play two sides of the ball, he plays two very important spots for Jacksonville. Because I think there's a chance Jacksonville could have some competent pieces on the football field, right? We look at their offensive line. Walker Little, passable. Like, he's okay. Ezra Cleveland, also okay, right? But if not, they have Chuma Edoga, somebody who's a high-level depth in the interior of the line at guard. So if he has to play as a starter, like, that's not horrible. Robert Hainsey, they brought him in from Tampa Bay to be a good center. If he's a good center, that's great. Makari played week in, week out for Baltimore, who obviously had a very productive rushing game. Anton Harrison, first-round pick from 2 years ago. Talented offensive tackle in need of some development. We'll see how that goes. But the point is like, there's a world where their offensive line is passable. If their offensive line is passable, they have two running backs in Etienne and Bigsby, which I don't think is going to be outstanding. They also have Bashal Tutin. I don't think it's going to be outstanding, but it could be passable. So I'm looking at this offense and I'm like, there's a potential for a passable offensive line. There's a potential for a passable rushing game. The thing is, though, if Travis Hunter plays really good at receiver, between Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr., I think they have a phenomenal receiving core because Wide receiver 3, De'Ami Brown should be able to do a job. I saw De'Ami Brown essentially function as Washington's wide receiver 2, and I would say he was okay as a 2. So if he steps into Jacksonville, right? He was playing with Scary Terry in Washington. If he's playing with BTJ and Travis Hunter, De'Ami Brown is going to have an easy time in that offense. And if that's the case, they're going to have a good receiving core. But if Travis Hunter is either not playing good at receiver or not playing receiver, I look at the receiver room very differently because I think BTJ as a 1, great. De'Ami Brown as a 2, Parker Washington as a 3, I don't love that, right? So the thing is, Travis Hunter potentially playing receiver at a high level or not is the difference between them having a great receiving core or them having an okay receiving core. And if you think about the fact that I think the rest of their offense is okay, solid, right? That's the difference between them having a average offense and them potentially being a dangerous football team. Again, Trevor Lawrence aside, right? Because Trevor Lawrence, I have some fair questions about. But yeah, Travis Hunter has a chance to really swing this offense. And then when you look at the defensive side of the ball, Trey Walker is producing at a high level now. Joshua Hines-Allen, phenomenal football player. You look at the inside of their defensive line. They have Eric Armstead. It's okay. It's nothing special, but they do have edge rushers. You look at their linebackers. They have 2 athletes in Devin Lloyd and Oluokun. And then again, you get to the secondary, right? Jordan Lewis, passable nickel corner. Tyson Campbell, they paid him a lot of money. I think he's an okay outside corner. But the weak spot really here is Jerrion Jones, who 3rd-round pick from last year, played okay, got jumped over backwards by Saquon Barkley. But if instead of Jerrion Jones, right, that's Travis Hunter, then, bro, I think you might have a good secondary, because, again, Hunter is your cornerback 1. Okay, Tyson Campbell is your 2. I like Tyson Campbell as a 2, much better than Tyson Campbell as a 1. Then now you have Jordan Lewis in the nickel. I'm like, okay, that's a functional corner room. At safety, you have Eric Murray. That's a role player. He's solid. Darnell Savage, free agent from Green Bay. He's okay too. I'm thinking, in the secondary, if Travis Hunter is the guy, then it lets everybody fall into their place as role players. If Travis Hunter is either not playing corner or not playing it at a high level, I then look at Tyson Campbell as a 1. I'm like, I don't love that. Jerrion Jones as a 2. I don't love that. With 2 weak corners on the outside, I don't love that. I don't love that for Jordan Lewis either. And then if the corner group as a whole isn't strong, I don't think those safeties are anything special to make up for it. So again, I think saying that he's going to play both sides of the ball is ridiculous. And I don't think that that's a fair expectation. But truthfully, if somehow, some way he's able to impact both positions, those are the 2 positions that could actually have Jacksonville as a 9-win team potentially, right? He's not just great, but he has the potential to impact 2 strong positions of need. So again, if he picks one or the other, then I think he'll be the deciding factor about whether the offense is good or the defense is good. And the other one is probably going to be average at best. But yeah, I just think it's very interesting how he fits into this team because he really is the difference at both positions that he plays. But yeah, that is the Jags. Looking at the Chiefs, there's nothing in particular I'm looking for with the Chiefs. I think they did a mini reload offensively. I like some of the pieces they add. Hey, what's going on, Sai? Oh my God, Sai pulled in just for the Chiefs, just in time. Okay, Sai, because you're here, I'm going to spend a little bit of extra time talking about the Chiefs. Okay, what am I going to be looking for with the Chiefs in training camp? I actually didn't even expect to talk about them, so this is just for my guy, Sai. The thing is, okay, I'm not going to be paying attention too hard to the receiver room because I know I like Rashee Rice's game. I know how I feel about Worthy and Brown. I think Royals is solid. But the plan isn't even for Royals to be a big piece. So, I don't know. Nothing much to see there. Josh Simmons, he's not healthy, right? So, okay, he had an injury. Even if he's healthy now, this is the beginning of him playing football again post-injury. So I'm not really looking to see, is he good or not? Because there's a chance he's not good because he's recovering from injury. That's not really a telltale sign of anything, right? Kingsley... cool. Maybe I'm looking to see how they say he's performing because he is going to step into, playing guard. But even him, right? He's transitioning from tackle to guard. If he's not playing good immediately, he's transitioning positions. So I'm not going to make a big deal out of that. What's going on? Bro, actually, you know what? I think for this stream, I'm just going to try to rip through it because I want to be done a little bit. So I'm just going to stay solo for this one. But yeah, other streams where I'm like okay for timing, I'll definitely let you guys hop on. I'm disappointed that TK didn't retire. I want a new tight end for Patrick. Interesting. Okay. Did they draft anybody? No. Okay. I mean, yeah, that they could have. I don't think he was going to retire under any circumstances. I do think they should have they should have drafted somebody that could push him. But yeah, like I don't know. I'm not going to be watching much when it comes to them offensively. When I think about the defensive side of the ball, if I had to conjure up something, it would probably be Christian Fulton. Because again, if you look at the rest of their defense, this is a lot of continuity. There's nobody here. They added some backups in Mike Edwards and Tillery. They added some young players. The main addition is Christian Fulton. And the thing is that like I don't think he was good in Tennessee at all. And I think in LA, he may have benefited from the scheme. I just don't think he's that good at football. I know he produced apparently last year, but I think Genwell can tell you this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. I don't think he's good at football. If he had good tape, that's because of Harbaugh and DC. Like that's because of what LA is. Because LA, Harbaugh is good at coaching football teams, right? This guy's not good, right? But he's going to be playing. McDuffie is really good. Watson is okay. Fulton is again cheeks according to Genwell. Maybe you know what? That's what I'm going to be looking for. Is Noel Williams good? Because if he is, I think he's going to have to play. So that's what we're going to look for. Okay, Genwell, I'm going to give you actually, guys, halftime of the stream, timeout. I'm going to go through a really quick recap for Genwell because you guys are joining, I guess, like just under an hour in. So for anybody that's new, stick around because I've been streaming for about almost an hour. If you guys missed that, I'm going to go through a quick recap of what you missed. So working backwards from KC, what am I going to be watching for Jacksonville? I'm going to be watching what side of the ball is Travis Hunter playing / is he playing both? Because what I talked about is that if he is a wide receiver one, he actually helps the whole wide receiving room fall into place to where you could say that their wide receiver room is actually pretty good. And if he's not, then again, BTJ has to be the one, and I think he can do that. But nobody else can. I don't think they have anybody else that's good enough to be 2, 3, 4. So now all of a sudden, if he's not a good receiver, their wide receiver room isn't great. I feel the same way about their corner room. If he's a cornerback 1, and then Campbell is a 2, everything else falls into place. I think they actually have a good secondary if he's a good corner 1. But if he's not, then I don't think they have he's not just a good player, but he's the difference between them having good receivers and not having good receivers. He's the difference between them having good corners and not having good corners. So I just think because of how much of a impact he's going to have on their team, he's who I'm paying attention to when I read up about Jacksonville's training camp. Indy, I'm paying attention to Anthony Richardson because the thing is like I think if you say that Daniel Jones is the starter, you're not just saying that Anthony Richardson isn't good enough now. You're saying he's not good enough, period. And if he's not good enough, I think Steichen gets fired at the end of the year. I think Ballard gets fired. And I think whoever the new regime probably brings in a new quarterback. So I think starting Daniel Jones is essentially the death wish for the bulk of that organization, which is why I think they're going to give Anthony Richardson every single opportunity to start. So if he doesn't get that starting spot, that's a huge declaration in Indy, in my opinion, which is why I'm going to be watching Indy's quarterback situation. Going back to Houston, I think Houston has a super team outside of their offensive line. And also, from what I've read, the Texans are going to have a very different rushing attack compared to what they did last year. Last year, they were a very Niners-esque outside running team. And that's why Dameon Pierce was kind of shit. But apparently they're going to be running up the middle a lot more. They're going to be a physical run between the guards kind of situation offensively. So they should get good Dameon Pierce back. That style suits Nick Chubb. And then Joe Mixon can definitely play that kind of football. So like I said, they could have a very good rushing attack. And if they do, they should have a very good offense. The key thing is just the offensive line because they were shit last year. They switched up their scheme. They were a little bit better. Then they've added some shit offensive linemen. Laken Tomlinson and Ed Ingram are not good. They have some young players that they're betting are going to get better. Like the offensive line is a huge it's literally 5 positions and there's 9 guys that could play, but there's only 2 guys that are like guaranteed spots. So that's all completely up in the air. But that's why I'm going to be looking towards Houston's offensive line because I actually think that's a super team, and if they have a good offensive line. The reality is that they just probably don't. Green Bay, nothing really stands out to me. Detroit, nothing really stands out to me. Maybe their interior of their offensive line because they have to start 2 young players because they've lost Ragnow and Zeitler. And again, I do think their offensive line is important because of the style of quarterback that Goff is. Denver, I think Denver's defense is going to be really good. I think their rushing attack should be really good. But what's going to actually tell you whether they're good or they're actually good or not is their passing attack. And I think there's nothing much to see with Bo Nix because I just think he is what he is. He's limited, and I expect him to have a sophomore slump. But if there's anything that could potentially offset that, it's the wide receiver room. We know what Cortland Sutton is. I don't think you can all of a sudden expect him to be much better. But you have 4 receivers here that were drafted in the last 3 drafts. Vele in 2024, Mims in 2023, Franklin in 2024, Pat Bryant this past year. You have 4 young wide receivers, and I think how they develop is going to say everything about this offense. If they don't look like good receivers, then I think this team just is going to be a good team that just isn't contenders. And if they have really good receivers, then there's a chance that Bo Nix's life is very, very easy. So that's why I'm going to be paying attention to the Broncos receivers. The Cowboys running backs, I'm going to be paying attention to their the fact that everything here is a hope. Javonte Williams being good is a hope because we haven't seen it since college. Miles Sanders being good for them is a hope because he has not shown that he can produce outside of Philadelphia's scheme, and Dallas can't replicate that. So he has to play the best football of his life in order to produce. That's a hope. Jaden Blue, this is a complimentary back. He wasn't even the best back in Texas. Deuce Vaughn is tiny, also a complimentary back. Phil Maffa, I don't know who he is, but he's a 7th round pick. So all things considered, this running back room is full of a bunch of hopes, and I don't think they're good enough to not have a good rushing attack. Also, Bo Nix, second year, Chris Bass. Bro, this is a real thing. Quarterbacks tend to struggle in their second year because the league knows who they are. So, if those young receivers aren't good, then I do think he's going to struggle. Next team, Cleveland Browns. I don't really care about the Browns. They're going to be shit. But if you're going to watch something, it's the quarterbacks because what the hell is this, man? 4 quarterbacks and they're all trash. Cincinnati Bengals. I'm watching their contract negotiators because you have 0 chance of being contenders if you don't have a good pass rush. 0. And their only hopes of being a good pass rush lie with Shamar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson, 2 people that are refusing to be a part of the team because of contracts. So again, I'm going to be watching the contract negotiators to see if they can get their goddamn job done. Bears, it's the running backs because if you think about it, if you think about them as a team that's looking to replicate Detroit offensively because they have Ben Johnson, you invested in the receiving core, you invested in tight end, you invested in the offensive line, but you did not invest in the running back room. And this running back room essentially has 2 backs, DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson. I don't think we know for a fact he doesn't like DeAndre Swift because Ben Johnson has traded him already. So really what I'm going to be watching is he a Roschon Johnson believer? Because there were a lot of Roschon believers in the draft, the year he was in the draft. We're going to see if Ben Johnson is one of those because it doesn't make sense to me why he wouldn't bring in a running back. Otherwise, he must be a fan. So I'm just going to look for evidence of that. Carolina Panthers, nothing much stands out to me. Buffalo Bills, definitely going to be watching the receiving room because I don't think it's possible to win a Super Bowl when you say that your quarterback has to be Superman every single game in the playoffs. Asking Josh Allen to be Superman for 4 games in a row in January and February is not a recipe for success. And the only way they could be relieved of having to ask him to be Superman is if these receivers are good. And again, a big thing here is, can Keon Coleman be a wide receiver 1? Because if he's a 1, then everybody else can fall into their roles. And much like Travis Hunter, Keon Coleman's jump is going to dictate whether this is a good receiving room or not. Because if he fails to be a number 1, there's not enough talent in terms of having a high volume of 2s and 3s to make up for it. And again, they're going to rely on Josh Allen to be Superman, and that's not going to be good enough. So all eyes on the receivers, but particularly Keon Coleman. Baltimore, nothing really stands out about Baltimore. Atlanta, we're going to be looking at the pass rushers because they have to, I think if they want the offense to produce, I think they have to let the offense run the ball a lot. And if for that to happen, they have to be a good defense. And the main thing that stopped them from being a good defense last year is their pass rushers were shit. So what they did is they went and drafted 2 rookies in the first round. Thing is, there's a chance that rookies aren't ready to play immediately. So if Walker and Pierce aren't really good pass rushers immediately, then they're actually probably going to struggle to be a good defense. So they're going to struggle to be a team that runs the ball a lot. And they're going to rely on Penix really in year 1 because he barely played last year. And when he did, it was in the middle of a playoff hunt. Like, what a horrible spot to put your rookie in. They're going to be relying on Penix too much, and I think that's going to not work out. So their pass rushers being ready to play early is going to be a huge dictator of how their season goes. So that's what I'm going to be paying attention to. And last but not least, Arizona. I don't think anything really particularly stands out. So general inside, that is my recap of everything that I've talked about so far. Now we're going to find the Chiefs and then finish going through the league after that. Next team, the Chargers. Okay, nothing in particularly stood out to me about the Chargers. If you look at what they've added, right? Dante Jackson, I don't think he's anything special. Like, I don't think he's really that good at football. But if you look at their team, they didn't have the greatest personnel. This man said, wait, you're getting your food? Okay, I'll go to the next team then. Rams. Okay, nothing really stood out to me about the Rams either. They've kind of made minimal moves. Like, they've added Coleman Shelton to play center. They already got rid of him once already. Devontae Adams, that's cool. I don't even necessarily know if McVay offenses have fed 2 receivers like that before. So this is kind of a new thing for me. Maybe, you know what? Maybe that's what I'm looking for. Do the Rams look like a team that can actually feed 2 receivers at a high level? Or is Devontae Adams now officially just a 2? Because if you think about it, right, these McVay offenses, like when Cooper Kupp was eating, Robert Woods was good, but like Robert Woods was a regular 2. Like, he wasn't producing like a T. Higgins or a Jalen Waddle or a Devontae Smith at times. Like, he wasn't producing like that kind of wide receiver 2. So I think about Adams and Nacua, and I'm like, that has the feel of a Waddle and a Hill, a Higgins and a Chase, A.J. Brown and a Devontae Smith. It has the feel of that kind of receiving core. But I've never seen McVay actually have offenses like that. So I guess that's what I'm going to be looking for does this offense look like a 2 receiver offense, or is Devontae Adams signing up to be Robert Woods? Outside of that, there's not much to watch for. Like, Poona Ford is a nose tackle. Nate Landman is probably going to be playing special teams. So there's not a ton of additions here. A lot of continuity, a lot of what we already saw last year. They're probably banking on a lot of internal growth. But yeah, I'm not paying attention to the Rams too tough. Las Vegas Raiders, definitely not much to pay attention here, man. I don't think this roster is good. I think Pete Carroll is probably going to do Pete Carroll things and get the absolute most out of this roster that can be gotten out of it, but I don't think that there's much as is. I don't think they have good enough weapons because, oh my goodness, man, look at this. Jacoby Myers is your 1. What is that? Basically, okay, truthfully, Brock Bowers is actually their like weapon 1 or like receiving weapon 1. I guess you could look at it like Jacoby Myers is your 2. And then probably Jack Beck or Jack Besh is going to be the 3. But yeah, man, like I don't see much in the Raiders that's worth paying attention to. Miami Dolphins. So Miami Dolphins, what I'm going to be paying attention to is a cornerback position because this cornerback position is a mess, in my opinion. You look at this. You got Storm Duck, undrafted rookie from last year. He's okay. Cam Smith, 2nd-round pick from 2 years ago. I haven't heard anything positive about him. Kader Kohu, solid nickel, to be honest, right? But a solid nickel alone is not going to do anything for you. You got Ethan Bonner, undrafted player that I haven't heard much about. Jason Marshall, 5th-round pick rookie. Hard to rely on that kind of a player. Artie Burns, this guy's literally famous for getting cooked. They don't have anything at corner outside of Kader Kohu. And when I think about this roster, this is a team that is going to have definitely new safeties, right? Because their top 3 safeties are all new additions. Their front seven as is not like a strength necessarily. It's okay. They have some players, but Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb have not been able to stay healthy. If they do, like, great, but that's just not a smart thing to bet on. The reason I say all those things, they don't have anything in the front seven that can compensate for how bad their corners are. They just don't have that. So if their corners are as bad as I expect them to be, their defense is just going to be really bad. And if you think about how that trickles down to the rest of the team, do they have the kind of offense that can compensate for being having a shit defense? I don't think so. Because what I think this offense needs, and I think it needs it for two reasons. I think this offense needs to be very good at running the ball. I personally don't think they have the offensive line to do that. But even if they do, if their defense is garbage, they're not going to have the luxury to run the ball a lot. As is, I don't think McDaniels is trying to do that. But I actually do think that that's the only hope that this offense has. One, I actually think Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, and Darren Waller, with nothing much behind that, behind an offensive line that I don't trust, I actually don't think that's enough, especially with Tua. Like, I don't think you want Tua upright in the pocket throwing the ball 45 times a game, as scared as I am of him getting hit. So, like I said, I think the only hope for this offense is if they're a good ground game. And you know what? I like Achane. Alexander Madison and Ollie Gordon might be able to be supplementary backs. I think they have the backs to be a good running game. I don't think they have the play caller nor the offensive line to achieve that. So, but even if somehow, some way the McDaniels commits to running the ball and the offensive line steps up, their defense is not going to let them be a running football team. So this team is going to be airing the ball out, finding itself in shootouts. That scares me for Tua's health. Tyreek already doesn't want to be there. Darren Waller is coming out of retirement. Like, I think the trickle-down effect of their cornerback spot being really weak is that this football team is going to fall apart, in my opinion. When I do my season predictions, you guys are going to be pretty surprised about where I have Miami. But yeah, I think it starts with the cornerback room. Next team, we're looking at Minnesota. Okay, I think things for Minnesota are pretty simple. I think this is a super team around JJ McCarthy. I like their receivers. Not much we have to say. Addison is going to be suspended, but he'll be back when they need him. Jefferson, Addison with Naylor, when Hawkinson is your tight end, that is completely sufficient as a passing attack, right? Last year, they had very good tackles prior to Darrisaw's injury. They just weren't good in the interior of the line. What did they do? They signed Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, and Donovan Jackson. Now, when you draft a rookie in the first round, that's not necessarily a sure thing, but I personally just think Donovan Jackson is a sure thing. I think his pedigree as an Ohio State offensive lineman, very good. I think he played a lot of football. I think he was a 3-4 year starter at Ohio State. So I think he's going to be good. I don't think they have to worry much there. Ryan Kelly, there's some concerns about him being washed, but he's probably going to be better than what they had last year. Will Fries, he played some pretty good ball, but he's coming off a bad injury. There's a chance he doesn't live up to it, but he's still probably better than what they had last year. You look in the backfield, they have Aaron Jones, who actually stayed healthy for the first time in his career last year. But, he's over 30. It's reasonable to assume he might be washed. But they traded for Jordan Mason, who honestly looked like a functional back behind a Niners offensive line that I don't think is particularly good. I think he's walking into a better offensive line in Minnesota. So, I like the pieces around the quarterback. You go to the defensive side of the ball. Brian Flores is a genius. He gets the absolute most out of his personnel, and they added even more to their personnel. They didn't have a presence in the interior of the line. Now, they signed 2 old, injury-prone defensive tackles in Hargrave and Allen, but again, it's probably still going to be better than what they had last year. They have Van Ginkel and Grenard, good players. They have 2 good linebackers. They have some interesting pieces in the secondary. Again, Flores is a genius. I literally think that this is a great team around JJ McCarthy. Now, what we saw last year is what this team looked like with a quarterback that nobody is particularly a big fan of. But whatever you think Sam Darnold is, JJ McCarthy's job is to just be better. If you think Sam Darnold is trash, then all JJ McCarthy has to be is average. If you think Sam Darnold is average, he just has to be above average. Point is that we saw this team win 14 games, and it upgraded its roster around the quarterback position. This team should be able to easily be in contention for the 1 seed if McCarthy is only okay. And that's why I think all eyes are on him, because if he's trash, Oh my goodness, that's a tragedy with the roster that Minnesota has created. Okay, General is back, so we're going to go back to the Chargers. Now, I didn't actually have much to say about the Chargers, but to just look at what they've done, right? I don't think Dante Jackson and Benjamin St. Juste are good players, but the point is like the Chargers really didn't have good players last year at corner, and they figured things out. So I don't know. I kind of just trust Harbaugh to develop the young players there, right? Maybe Cam Hart and Tarheeb Steele, they come back better players next year, right? The other additions, Deshaun Hand, that's a role player. They made some draft picks to be depth guys. Again, when I'm talking about what I'm looking for or like what I'm looking to pay attention to, I don't really see much to pay attention to on the defensive side of the ball because I don't really think there's like major changes. And then when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, I don't think there's much to pay attention to because again, I feel like I know what I'm getting, right? With Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris, eye injury aside, apparently he's going to be okay. Like I think that it's clear that they have an upgrade in the running back spot, right? When they lost Dobbins, they stopped running the ball basically last year, right? But with Hampton and Najee Harris, you have two backs. If some guy gets hurt, you have the other. This is a power running scheme. They're both backs that should thrive in that setting. So I don't really I'm not going to be paying attention to the Chargers like training camp reports on the running back room because I know for a fact it got better, right? Other main addition, right? Mekhi Becton. In a power running scheme, similar to what he was playing in Philadelphia, I think he's going to do a great job. Him and Joe Alt together, they are going to be fucking guys up on the right side of that offensive line. Like this offensive line is going to be good. When I'm talking about what I'm paying attention to, I'm thinking about things that I'm uncertain about, things that I'm very curious to see how they turned out. I'm not curious about anything with the Chargers because I know that I think the corners that they added are trash, and I know that I think the offensive players they added are good. Trey Harris, the organization that found Ladd McConkey, I just trust them. I didn't think the world of Trey Harris, but I'm open-minded. Like I don't feel the same way about him that I felt about the corners. I'm open-minded that he could be good, right? Quentin Johnson allegedly might have hands, right? Mike Williams retired. They're going to be relying on him. But again, Greg Roman is a running coach. He wants to run the ball. And when I look at a team that added Omarion Hampton, Mekhi Becton, and Najee Harris, they are going to run the fuck out of the ball. Like, I know what to expect from the Chargers. There's no illusions for me. I know what I'm signing up for. So, yeah, for that reason and that reason alone, I'm not all that, like, curious about them. Like, I know what's going to happen next year. So, yeah, like, internal growth, internal development, maybe I'll be paying attention to see players like Tarheeb Steele and Cam Hart if they got better. But yeah, that's that on the Chargers. Where did I leave off? I think I left off on Minnesota. Yeah, I did. Okay, New England. All right. So New England, what am I gonna be paying attention to? It's gonna be the receivers, but really it's gonna be Stephon Diggs, and I'll explain to you why. Right? I look at their defensive side of the ball. Every scheme because they have no weapons. This is true, man. This is what I'm saying. There's not going to be shit that I'm paying attention to for the Raiders because I already know what to expect. Geno's going to be mid. Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers are going to be good. Everybody else is going to be trash. I already know what to expect. Okay, when it comes to the Patriots, right? Okay, look at the defensive side of the ball. I expect Barmore, health provided, him and Milton Williams are going to be good. Keon White, so Harold Landry is going to be good. Keon White's probably going to be okay, right? If you look at their linebackers, between Gibbons, Ellis, and Spillane, they should have good linebackers, right? Jennings and Kason, I expect them to be mid. Carlton Davis, I expect to be good. Gonzalez, I expect to be elite. Marcus Jones should be good. Duggar and Pepper should be good, right? I'm not really lost too much on their defense. Between the talent that they have and Vrabel, they should be a good defense. I'm not saying elite. I'm not saying great. They should be a good functional defense in the NFL, right? Offensively, when I think about the running back room, I'm a huge Travion Henderson fan. So with Henderson being the main guy, you have Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson as supplementary guys. I expect the running back room to look good. At the quarterback spot, we have Drake May. I like Drake May. I expect Drake May to take steps forward, right? At the tight end spot, I expect them to be mid. At the offensive line, in the offensive line room, I expect Will Campbell to be good, and I expect everybody else to be mid. Who the fuck is Jalen Hawkins for them? Wait, where is Jalen Hawkins? Is that on defense? Oh, he's a backup safety. Yeah, he's a backup safety. Um, but yeah, I expect their offensive line to have Will Campbell, who's good, and everybody else who's mid. The receiving spot is where I think that things are up in the air because here's the thing: if Diggs is trash, then I think the receiving room is going to suffer because Pop Douglas, I think, is functional. Kyle Williams, I expect to be good. Kendrick Bourne is respectable. Mac Hollins can do a job here and there. Kayshawn Booty, he's okay. They have a bunch of okay receivers, but again, I think Kyle Williams and Pop Douglas can be a 2 or a 3, right? So if Diggs can be a 1, and here's the thing, right? People say Diggs is washed. I think it's fair to say that an old receiver off an Achilles tear is not going to look good. I don't think he was playing bad that last year, like that in Houston prior to injury. I don't think he was playing bad ball. I don't think he's like a 1. He's not in his prime. He's past his prime for sure. But I still think he was good prior to in his ACL tear. Now, he's older. Year 1 off an ACL injury is shaky. That's scary. People say that year 2 is when you're really, really healthy, right? Year 1 is going to be rough. So that's why I say, right? This thing with Diggs, this is going to be a big indicator of how things are going to go, because if Stephon Diggs can somehow, some way even be an average wide receiver 1, then I think, he's going to be an average 1. I think Kyle Williams and Pop Douglas are going to be functional 2s and 3s. Like, I think they'll have a functional set of weapons, which I think means that offensively, if the offensive line, the offensive line is going to be mid, and that's really going to hold them back from being a good offense, right? But at least May has a chance to maybe show what he can do. But if he's not good, then I think they're going to suffer as an offense, right? Because between having a mid offensive line and having mid weapons, it's literally going to be May, Travion Henderson, and prayers beyond that. So that's what they're going to be offensively. So again, I can paint 2 different timelines, right? If Diggs is good by the grace of God post ACL tear, then I actually think they can throw the ball around a little bit. They can be a threat with Henderson. Henderson is a great back as a pass catcher. Like, offensive line is going to hold them back, but they can play some good ball here and there, right? If you don't have a good pass rush and you don't really expose their offensive line, they're probably going to put numbers up. But if he's not good, then yeah, I think their offense suffers and they become an ugly football team that plays good offense, good defense, and bad offense. So yeah, I think all falls on Stephon Diggs' shoulders. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be paying attention to New England training camp reports to see, is Stephon Diggs playing good ball? Next team, New Orleans Saints. Not curious about anything. Is a bit crazy. I mean, I don't think it's 360. I saw it was 342. And the thing is like, they're just paying him money to rehab out of love. So it's basically 228 when he's actually playing, which is probably still like a little bit much, but also like they've been overpaying him his whole career. Like, they're clearly paying him like, like this is like some paying him out of love kind of a thing. He's earning 70 million next year. Well, hold on. I heard this. This doesn't make sense to me. He's making 14 mil from the Blazers. Is the part of his buyout in Milwaukee that they pay him a bunch of money up front? Because he's literally getting paid what? They stretched him for 20 mil, like 20 mil from the Bucks, 14 mil from the Blazers. Like, I saw this as well. I literally don't understand it. But yeah, there's nothing to care about when it comes to the Saints. I don't think their receiving room is good enough. You have to worry about Olave. Their offensive line should be good and functional. With their running back room, they're praying that Kamara isn't washed. But again, at 30 as a running back, it can happen any day. Tyler Shuck, I expect to struggle. So again, like I just nothing I'm curious about. I don't think their offense is going to be good. And I think their defense from a personnel standpoint is okay, but they're relying on too many old men. Cameron Jordan is an old man. Demario Davis is an old man. Tyrann Mathieu is an old man. Old men have a hard time playing defense. So I don't expect much for the Saints. New York Giants. Am I going to be paying attention to too much? Not really, man. I know what to expect from the quarterbacks. I don't expect them to be good. Offensive line, I expect to be mid. Receivers outside of Neighbors, I expect to be mid, and I expect Neighbors to be good. Running backs will be functional. Defensively, they should be pretty good. I think, bro, Abdul Carter and Brian Burns is so. It's Dexter Lawrence, bro. That is a hell of a trio. They got Javon Holland and Tyler Nubin. I like their safeties. Their corners should be okay. Like as a whole, their defense should be good. Offense is probably going to be trash. Like simple. I literally think that they're going to be a slightly lesser version of what Pittsburgh was last year. Maybe on par with what Pittsburgh was last year. But I literally like I've drawn a lot of parallels between them and the Steelers of last year. Same thing of like they're probably going to beat the bad teams and lose to the good teams. That's what the Giants are. So I'm not really that curious about what they have going on in training camp. When it comes to the Jets, I feel pretty similarly. I expect Garrett Wilson to be good. I expect the rest of their receiving room to be not good. Offensive line, I expect to be okay. Ground game, I expect to be solid. Fields, that's a bit of a question mark, but there's nothing he could show me in training camp that would intrigue me one way or another. I got to see it on Sundays. Defensively, I expect Aaron Glenn to get the most out of whatever they have. Now, I don't think they have the best talent defensively because I'm not a big fan of Brandon Stevens. I'm not a big fan of anybody that they have in the middle of the line outside of Quinnen Williams. So yeah, like the defense is solid. Their linebackers are good. Safeties are going to be okay, I think. And Brandon Stevens, I don't think is that good. So yeah, nothing too interesting about the Jets. Oh, when it comes to the Eagles, so the thing that I'm going to be watching for is the development of young players because they're replacing effectively Milton Williams with Moro Ojomo, third year player. They are replacing Josh Sweat with Jalix Hunt, second year player, and they are replacing Darius Slay with Keely Ringo, third year player. Yes, third year player. So you got a lot of young players stepping into spots. Oh, CJGJ, realistically, it says Sidney Brown is starting. Realistically, it's going to be Andrew Makuba, rookie. So you got a lot of young players playing for Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia also played a lot of young players last year, right? Hold on. This season is already better for the Jets off the field just by getting Aaron Rodgers. Facts. This is true. This is a big addition by subtraction. But yeah, if you look at this defense, man, Jordan Davis is young, Jalen Carter is young, Nolan Smith is young, Nakobe Dean has been young, like he's young as well. Last year, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, two rookies. Oh, I just realized that's out of the shot. Two rookies played. They're both young. This was a very young defense last year. It's getting even younger. So there's the upside of you're going to have youthful, athletic, energetic players that can play a lot of snaps. The downside is they're inexperienced. I trust Vic Fangio, but the point is that like we lost some very good premium established talent in Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Darius Slay, and CJ Gardner-Johnson. It's going to be a thing to see whether they're replaced or not. Now, I think Jalix Hunt played his best ball in the playoffs. I think Moro Ojomo played his best ball in the playoffs. But obviously Makuba and Keely Ringo didn't play in the playoffs, right? One wasn't on the Eagles, one was a special teamer. So how the young players develop in training camp is going to be a big thing. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing. Jahad Campbell, I think this guy is so good at football. Like he's going to be a bit of a wild card, but he's only going to get healthy in the middle of August, much like Cooper DeJean, by the way. Cooper DeJean missed almost all of training camp last year, wasn't on the field until week 4. I expect Jahad Campbell to actually be like another Cooper DeJean, somebody who gets on the field probably week 2, week 3, and then takes maybe another month or so to really get in the swing of things. But by January, I expect Jahad Campbell to be a very valuable player for us on the football field. But again, it's going to take time. We're relying on a lot of young players, and we're going to have to see how they play. Okay, Pittsburgh Steelers. What am I paying attention to? It's pretty clear. I'm going to be paying attention to the running backs because it's unclear whether they're going to be good or not. There's a couple things that are in the air. But more importantly, I think the running back spot is so important for this team because I actually think that they have the ability to be a ground game and defensive kind of a football team, right? We're just going to have to see if they can do it because I think that if they want any chance to be good with Aaron Rodgers, I kind of think he's washed. Like people are going to tell you that the Steelers don't have good receivers. To me, that's not even a big deal because I don't even think Rodgers could maximize having good receivers. But I think the kind of team they're built to run the ball. The question is are their running backs good enough? But if you look at who they are defensively, right? Cam Hayward, it has been good. He's still good. He's old. He might not be good now. But they have Keanu Benton and Derek Harmon in the interior of their defensive line, two young players that I expect to be good, right? They have TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. They have Herbig, who I think is a good backup, and Jack Sawyer, who I think is probably going to be a good backup. Their pass rushers are good. Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, their linebackers are good. In the secondary, bro, they have more DBs than they know what to do with. Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter Jr. In some order, those corners are probably going to be good. And then you replace Minka, who apparently fell off last year, with Juan Thornhill, who's probably going to be mid, but Deshaun Elliott is good. Like, this defense should be pretty good. I then look at the offensive side of the ball, right? Broderick Jones, I think, is young left tackle who's been developing. I think he should be, third year. There's no excuse for you to not play the best football of your life. Isaac Samalo, good player. Zach, like this whole right side of the line, they're all going into their second years. Again, they should be playing the best football of their life. My thing is, like, this offensive line should be pretty good. I actually think these guys were all you good prospects. This should be a very good offensive line. So I say this to say, if you have a good offensive line and you have a good defense, you can be a ball control offense. The other thing that really indicates that to me is that they're a two tight end football team. They have Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith. They don't have three receivers that are good enough to take the two tight ends off the field, right? You have DK Metcalf, then you have a washed Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, who we didn't see anything from last year, and then a bunch of guys. So the point is that this is going to be a two tight end and two receiver kind of an offense, right? Between the offensive line and having two tight ends, oh my God, you should, from a schematic standpoint, be a very good rushing team. You add on top of that, they have Arthur Smith, the guy who was a part of Tennessee's great rushing attacks, the guy who, ran the ball so much in Atlanta, even when they couldn't. Like, this team should be a very good running team and a very good defensive team. And if that's the case, Aaron Rodgers should be able to game manage. The question is, do they have the running backs to capitalize on this setup? Because Jaylen Warren, we've seen him play good football, but we've seen him play good football as the change of pace back. He might not be the change of pace back. And if because he might have to be the starter. And if he is, does he look as good as a starter? That is undefined. The thing that dictates whether he's going to be the starter or the change of pace guy is Caleb Johnson. Do we know how good he is as a third-round pick rookie? We don't. That's up in the air. So, that's another thing to keep in mind, right? Is this guy going to be good? Complete unknown. Kenny Gainwell on the Eagles last year, this is a good pass blocking back, can make a play here and there. He's definitely a complementary piece. I don't think he's a candidate to have an expanded role. So really, what's going to dictate whether they have a good rushing attack or not is how much Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren live up to the opportunity. If they maximize the opportunity, guys, I actually think that this is going to be a better team than they were last year. If they don't, then what happens is Aaron Rodgers has to throw the ball more. And if he has to throw the ball more, I don't think that's going to go good. I don't think he's good anymore. But the point is I don't think Peyton Manning was good in his last year when he won a Super Bowl. I think Tom Brady was 50% as good as his peak when he won a Super Bowl in Tampa. I've seen two washed quarterbacks win Super Bowls before. Aaron Rodgers, if he wants to be the third, he cannot be a player that throws the ball a lot. And what's going to dictate that are the running backs, which is why I am going to be paying close attention to Jaylen Warren and Caleb Johnson. Seattle Seahawks, there's not much I'm going to be paying attention to with this team. I don't love the receivers. I really like JSN, but I'm not a huge fan of MVS and Cooper Kupp. Torrey Horton, we're going to see about. Jake Bobo, we're going to see about. Obviously, I'm not a fan of their offensive line. Obviously, I'm not a fan of their quarterbacks. So I already know that I don't think I'm going to love their offense, even though I like their offensive coordinator. Defensively, I like their pieces. I don't think we saw a defense that lived up to the pieces last year. And I think I would attribute that to Mike McDonald not having the right scheme fits. But, he had a whole offseason. He chose to only add 3 players, DeMarcus Lawrence, Nick Emenwari, and Shaquille Griffin. So that excuse is gone now. I'm just going to go ahead and take the leap of faith to say that they're going to have a good defense because I like Mike McDonald. I like a lot of their pieces, and I'm sure it gets figured out. But yeah, I just know that I'm not going to like their offense, so it is what it is. Niners, yeah, nothing really interests me too much in their training camp. It's a pretty transitional year. I just don't expect the world from them. Jawan Jennings wants a trade. It is what it is, man. I don't love their offensive line. I think their defense lost a lot. We're going to see if their young players can live up to what they lost. But yeah, I don't know. I don't expect the Niners to do big things this year. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yeah, nothing really interests me too much because again, they didn't really do much. They literally like their only two moves you can say were major moves are Hassan Reddick and Emeka Egbuka, and in both situations, I feel like I know what to expect. I don't think Hassan Reddick is going to be particularly good, and I think Egbuka is going to be amazing, but you already had good receivers, so I don't know about that. Tennessee, nothing really interests me too much. I think they have a lot of mid players offensively, like a lot of mid. So I expect them to be an average offense, and then defensively, honestly, I think they have a lot of mid as well. I just think this is an average team, so nothing really interests me too much. The last team we're left with, the Washington Commanders. So the Commanders, what I want to highlight about them is that like I think the edge rush spot is going to be so important for them because I think their offensive line is set to be okay, right? Coleman is okay, Biotish is okay, Cosme is great, but he's coming off an injury. Laramie Tunsil, he's pretty good, but he's probably on his way down as a player, so like he'll be fine. Offensive line as a whole, it should be solid. Their wide receiver room, again, I actually only think that two of these players are good, and that's Scary Terry and Debo. The thing about Debo is that like I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. He hasn't played well in 2 years. I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt, but he might not be good. Scary Terry, this guy's amazing, right? But contract dispute. How's that going to impact his year? We're going to see. Does he want to play? We're just going to have to see how that works out, right? But that being said, it's not really interesting for me to follow because I feel like I know what I have. At their running back room, again, I think these players aren't good enough. The running back room is very mid. I know what to expect. Jaden, he's going to be phenomenal. I know what to expect. Defensively, again, I think there's some good players. There's some players that I expect to not be that great. But really what's going to decide, I think, their season defensively is the pass rush spot because, defensive end edge rusher, that's such a crucial part of any football team. If you look at what they have, Dorrance Armstrong is solid. Dietrich Wise, solid. Clellan Farrell, he's solid, right? They don't have, these guys are all depth pieces. Jacob Martin, solid. Like they have a bunch of solid players. I was going to step into this before signing Von Miller. My whole thing was like, this is just going to be an average edge rush rotation. And that's what part of what's going to stop them from being true contenders. Von Miller is the addition that maybe you look at and you say that's a difference maker. Now, I think Von Miller is past it. And I don't think he's in the difference maker stage of his career. I think he's washed. But the point is that like what I'm going to be paying attention to is, am I wrong about anybody? Because they're not going to win a Super Bowl with average pass rusher rotation. It's just not going to happen. So that's going to be the key thing there, right? If you look at the rest of their team, I know what I'm getting with Daron Payne. I think he's very good. I know what I'm getting with Johnny Newton. I think he's a good up-and-coming player. Eddie Goldman is solid. Sheldon Day is solid. I think Javon Kinlaw is trash. I don't know why he got the contract he got, right? But I know how I feel about everything. Louvu, I think is good. Wagner, I think is good, but he's on his way down. I know what I can expect there, right? Jonathan Jones, steady player. Sanders still good player. Marshawn Lattimore, I think he's cooked. I think he's on his way down. Trey Amos, this is the wild card. I think he has the potential to take somebody's job, but he also might not be good. Like he's a complete wild card to me. I actually don't know his game that well. Will Harris is going to be mid. Quan Martin is probably going to be good. Like I know how I feel about a lot of things. But I think that they can cope everywhere else on the field because you can rely on Sanders still and maybe Trey Amos to be difference makers. You can rely on Louvu to be a difference maker at those levels of the field. At the defensive tackle spot, you can rely on Daron Payne. But can you rely on anybody at the edge rusher spot to be anything better than average? I don't know. And Dan Quinn is a very respected defensive coach and a very respected coach generally. I just don't know if he has enough, but nonetheless, we're going to see what happens to them. So That's the end of the series, people. I'm gonna close up this stream here. Shout out to everybody that tapped in. Basically, the plan for the off season after this point is basically every day on my way home from work, I'm going to scan through the internet and look at teams training camp notes, right? So I'm going to read as much as I can, and if there's anything that I find interesting to talk about, I'm going to come home and set up a stream for, again, probably this time. So I started this stream around 9 p.m. Eastern time. That's probably on the later end of when I would do it. I'd probably do it around 8. So you can expect streams 8 o'clock Eastern time. I'm going to try to be mindful of the fact that, like, I don't want to make people like hung up on whether I'm going live or not. So I'm probably going to post, like make a text post on the channel just saying either I'm going live tonight or I'm not. But yeah, if I see something cool worth talking about, I'm going to go live and we're going to watch games. Sorry, we're going to talk about it. I just saw Jen Will's thing here. And if not, we're not going to force it, right? But yeah, like I said, I'm going to be following up on these storylines. I'm going to be following up on everything I've talked about. I genuinely mean it when I say everything that I was interested in following up on. These are all really important parts of all of these teams. And, you know, it's going to inform how I feel about them going into next year. Plan is we will see some preseason games. Jen Will, I actually looked at the dates. I'm going to finalize the dates in a little bit, just depending on my schedule. But I think the days were the 9th and the 16th, where there's a fuck ton of preseason games going on. And we're going to do like a preseason red zone kind of a thing. So yeah, that's definitely going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be watching preseason football as well. But yeah, shout out to everybody that's tapped in. 6 people watching live. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. In Motion Football, we got content throughout the summer. This is my first live stream back. I feel like this is the first serious live stream I've done since the draft, because the only streams I did after the draft were the 2 UFL games, and that was pretty unserious. So we're back in the swing of things, people. Football is upon us, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss when I go live. Hit that like button so that the content gets pushed to as many people as possible. And aside from that, I'll see you guys in a bit. You guys be safe. Take care. I'm out.